Tensions running high at last night's marathon 5-hour-long Medford School Board meeting. Good evening and thank you for choosing NBC 5 News at 6. I'm Andrea Boyd. Complaints continue to take over Medford School District Board meetings. NBC 5's Lauren Preto is live in studio with our top story tonight at 6. Lauren.
Andrea, last night, board member Jeff Canella apologized in response to a complaint against him, while fellow board member Michael Williams filed new complaints against the superintendent and the board chair. At the same time, the grievance chair of the district's teachers union says the way the board treats Canella and Williams differently is very telling. During the January 23rd school board meeting, Nathaniel Swan, a parent who was escorted out of a December board meeting, spoke up during public comment, bringing up the Director of Security, Ron Havner, by name. Board Chair Cynthia Wright cut off Swan, saying it was against board policy for any staff member to be addressed directly during public comment. In the midst of Swan's comment about being cut off, board member Jeff Canella muttered an expletive directed at Swan. 2 complaints were filed against Canella by Swan and his wife, Taryn Saunders, saying Cancella's words violated a board member's standards of conduct. Canella requested time Thursday night to apologize for his language, saying he was triggered by Swan yelling at Wright.
I fell below my standard that I set for myself on that night, so I will keep my mic off from now on. Anyway, I did it, and I'm sorry that I did it.
After the apology, the board voted to censure Canella until the end of his term, but no restrictions were put on him. Medford Education Association grievance chair Paul Sinar found issue with how the board treated the complaint against Canella versus multiple complaints against fellow board member Michael Williams.
You said instead you will turn your mic off in the future. That's not an apology to change your habits. That's to not get caught. And yet you guys hold him accountable in such a way that you censor him. But you won't do that and treat the same members of this community and this committee in the same way.
Later in the 5+ hour meeting, the board read out 2 new complaints filed by Williams himself against Wright and Superintendent Brett Champion. This comes after restrictions were placed on Williams when the board concluded he had broken school board policy on multiple occasions involving separate complaints, one from Havner and the other from Champion and district staff. Williams' complaint against Wright alleges she violated multiple board policies involving board member authority, standards of conduct, and retaliation and intimidation after he says she pushed him to resign.
My intent was not to have you change to meet my views of the roles and responsibilities, but just the roles and responsibilities that we've been taught and have been enforced on all of us.
Williams also says Wright had him meet with Cynthia Richardson, the board chair of the Salem-Keizer School District, to get better direction on his role as a board member.
She said, "Now, Michael, I want you to talk to her because she's black and I think you'll listen to her." And I thought, that's weird. But I said, okay, all right.
The board found only 1 complaint against Wright was substantiated, in that she violated board member standards of conduct for failing to treat Williams with respect in public messaging in this statement she made on January 23rd.
His conduct did not meet the standards of professionalism and competence required and expected of a board member.
Williams' complaint against Champion alleges similar policy violations for intimidating and retaliating against him. Largely silent for the last couple of months, on the advice of his attorney, Williams says only one side of the story about the altercation between the 2 men back in October was told.
I 100% stand by my words in those complaints.
All complaints against Champion were not substantiated by the board and therefore were dismissed. Williams says all this comes back to is the restrictions placed against him and how they are unfair.
The only thing that I was asking for was for someone else to take responsibility for their actions in all of this as well. I just want to be able to move in my role and fulfill my role to the extent that everyone else here does. What you're showing is that you are not interested in working with me.
If you didn't want those restrictions, you should have not violated the policy. We are going to review them at the next board retreat. There is an end to this, but it will depend on your attitude.
Medford Education Association grievance chair Paul Sinar took the opportunity during public comment to take the board to task with some explosive words.
I believe you are being racist. When people I know sit and watch the board meetings and watch you call out a person on this board who clearly looks different, they mentioned to me, does anybody else realize he's the only black person in the room?
As soon as the meeting concluded, Williams and Director of Security Ron Havner shared some contentious looks, shouting at each other to stop staring before Havner left the room. The next steps into the complaint against Cynthia Wright will be discussed at the board's next meeting. In the studio, Lauren Preto, NBC5 News.